below this previous low around 1165. The other possibility is, let's say that this market does look like it's going to kind of bounce, and the last that I saw on today's action on July 9th was that it was a little bit softer again today, but our predicted high right here is at, our last predicted high is at 1207, so our buy point would be at 1217 if we were to contemplate adding to the position and again, building it up, assuming that the trend would continue. So that's kind of the process for managing a trend, for building a position. Sometimes, as I say, sometimes what happens is that, the market will cooperate nicely. Other times it won't be so nice, but in this case we had a long-term trend in gold that was pretty much to the upside. And, we could have the same thing. It could happen in any market. It could happen in the stock indexes. If you hear some people talk about this is a time for the stock market rally. Just a quick look here. You don't have to do gold futures. There is a time factor in gold futures. You have to roll over contracts, maybe a little bit more irritating, but you also have the opportunity here to trade the Street Tracks Gold Trust, the GLD ETF. You don't have to get out of the market. You can just kind of ride it along and, make it even a little bit easier perhaps. And you can see that that chart looks quite a lot like the gold futures chart that we looked at with the, various, this is a triple cross on here, and we have that little wrinkle that we now have towards the end of that. That suggests that, well, maybe we're in for a little bit of a downturn. This is probably the biggest decline recently, so is at the end of the downturn, or the uptrend rather. So there's an alternative. But when you look at the alternatives, when you talk about gold as a market, we're not really, advocating for gold. We're mostly interested in talking about managing a trend trading position. But for gold, you have, alternatives like you could be in physical gold. And the question is, where do you keep it, and how do you get in and out of that so easily? And you have gold coins, you have gold bullion, gold certificates. You have a lot of other alternatives. But when it really comes down to managing a position, managing a trend, you get more flexibility in a market like futures, and you can combine that also with options. If you have for example, if you have a long position and it's kind of a sizable one, you potentially can sell calls against it, like a covered call situation. Lots of things that you can do with options connected with futures. So the main question that you have when you're talking about gold, again, just one other comment on the gold market, is that the trend at this point is clearly to the upside, and I think what you would have to conclude, and this may not definitely be a conclusion, but a conclusion that you might have to make, that if gold prices go down, then what that means is that the issues that have been facing the U.S. dollar and the euro and the various other paper currencies, they've all resolved, all these debt problems, and we no longer have the debt issues to worry about, and the other economic issues have been resolved, and all is nice and clean in the world of the economist and in the financial world. So if you believe that, of course, and everything is going fine, it's kind of like it's either gold goes up or these other markets go down, according to a lot of, that's a decision that you have to make, and you can, if you watch the other, things that happen, the current year, you can make a conclusion about gold based upon what happens in the other markets because of the influence of intermarket analysis. Just to conclude, we have talked about today and kind of sum up things. For staying on the trend path, you can see we have that arrow pointed up to the heavens, and maybe it's not quite so clear how easy this is to make that stair step up, but as you go along, you need to identify that primary trend. That's the one that you want to hitch your horse to, move up with it. You want to watch, is that trend kind of in momentum? For what I use with the vantage point, I use the predicted differences as a good strength or weakness. Usually we'll stick with longer term indicators. That's why I showed you the triple cross with the longer term moving averages, exponential other possible ways of using indicators like longer term for a longer term position just makes more sense. Key at the beginning of the trend is to get positioned right. You have the base in place. It allows you to kind of absorb some of the get going, kind of a little shock absorber to keep you going. Maybe you come out even, maybe it isn't the trend that you thought it was going to be. But getting in right is important. So you can't let that noise and counter trend moves disrupt whatever plan you have. And of course, patience and perseverance are important. If you are a trend trader, long-term trend trader, and you're trying to manage it, there are so many different things that come along that can shake you out of your mode. That it's the type of thing that if you've done your work and you kind of see where things are going, a little patience goes a long way. But there does come a time when it will end. There's no trend is going to go on forever. And first, that fact, and that when it's enough, time to get out, take your profits, and kind of look at that next trend. It could be on the downside. For all you know, it could be a point when the market does make that turn, starts to go down. Maybe that's the road up, as you see there with the move up to heaven. Maybe it's just going the other way. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to take any questions if there are any. As I say, I'm not really talking necessarily about gold today, but I'm mostly trying to hit the market it happens to be. If you're interested in the software and the Vantage Point, you need to click on the information at Vantage Point. Folks can tell you a lot more about those forecasts than I can. So would any aspect of managing a trend or kind of want to do with the trend, I'm glad to take those. Just doing a series of webinars. There are a number of webinars on the cover all kinds of strategy types of issues, and keeping in mind that something that come up in my mind, but obviously it's impossible to absolutely test out everything. So maybe come up with an idea that certainly looks good, but in reality may not work. But if you have an indicator, if you have something to help you along the way, can make a little. I do thank you for attending this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you at future webinars. So Darrell, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Darrell. The recording for this webcast will be posted on Trader Planet this afternoon, and we've made arrangements to email the link to everyone who is registered for this event. If you are interested in seeking further information on the software that Darrell has featured in this presentation, just select the Click Here link on the final slide. This will place a request with our friends at Market Technologies for free market forecasts and additional information on the Vantage Point Intermarket Analysis software. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you for attending, and all of us here at Trader Planet wish you a pleasant evening.